Well, welcome back to another session of the 6th grade painting project. When we left off in our last session, we were, it looks like we had completed our primaries and our secondary colors, and so that means we're making really pretty good progress here today. And what we will do then is move on to the tertiary colors, and then with some luck we might even be able to start doing the next exercise, which would be a tinting scale, which would require us to use the color white as well. So I'm going to have that close by, so if I need to, we can get it ready. Okay, so make sure that your brush is clean. And when we were in the lecture, I was explaining to you that the three colors, red, yellow, and blue, are the basic colors that we make every other color from. So basically, by using red, yellow, blue, black, and white, we can make every color that you can possibly imagine. So we've got our red, yellow, and blue, our primaries. Then we would do our secondary colors. When we mix together red, yellow, and blue in appropriate amounts, we start getting, they change colors. So for instance, if we were to mix red and blue together, we would get this grape jelly purple if we do it right. This pumpkin orange, or just orange, is when we mix together red and yellow. And then lastly, if we were to mix together some yellow and blue, we should get green. So these are the colors on the color wheel. There are red, yellow, and blue are a right side up triangle. Green, orange, and violet are a upside down triangle. And then in between all of those colors are small dots on the color wheel. And those small dots are called tertiary colors. And tertiary colors are simply when we mix a primary color and a secondary color together. So if we were to mix a primary color like red with a secondary color such as orange, we would get red-orange. That's what it would be. If we were to mix red with violet, we would get red-violet, which is kind of a reddish-brown color. So if you mix red and green together, you'll get a bit of a mess. But if you're looking to make some olive colors or off, not quite very bright greens like army green, then that's how you kind of go about doing that. Alright then, so let's get started here. So we're going to mix up some colors, and you should not put your paint card on top of your painting, but so that you can see what I am doing, I am going to put that here. And now we're going to be working down in this area. If you recall yesterday, we went corner, 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 then top, then bottom, side, side, and then in the middle if we do this all properly. So we're going to go down to the extreme lower right-hand corner in this case. And what we're going to do is we're going to make up a color that everybody gets really pretty well on the very first try. And that color is going to be red-violet. So I'm going to move my cards here so that we can make these colors, and you can see what I'm doing up here. So for red-violet, we need, we're going to make violet like we kind of did here, but we're going to put more red into it than we're going to put blue into it. So in this case, on your mixing card, you'll need a blank index card for your mixing card. We're going to take 2 scoops of the blue, and it's important that you clean out your brush each time you change colors, okay? Let me get my, I've got my paper towel, is not really handy there. Okay, so now I'm going to dry out my brush so it doesn't have a bunch of pollution in it, and I'm going to also go ahead and pick up, let's make 3 dips of the red, because what we want is more red than blue in our red-violet, which is what we're going to make. Okay, we had 3 dips of red, 2 dips of blue, and just like yesterday when we made the secondary colors, we're going to scrape all this together into a tight little pile. Like if our paintbrush was a broom, we'd be trying to sweep it all into a little pile of sand if that paint was sand. Okay, now what we should be getting is a reddish brown color, or a mahogany, if you recall that color, or perhaps even a cranberry or fuchsia or maroon is what some people would call this color. So it's if it's grape jelly purple, you got to put more red into it. Now here's the thing. That will be the solution to all of the tertiary colors. So it's simply a type of purple that has more red in it than blue. And so that's kind of the color we're looking for. If you get grape jelly purple, you got to put more red into it. If you get something that's really, really super dark blue, like navy blue, you really got to put more red into it. So it's just simply purple that's got more red in it than it does violet, or more red in it than it does blue. Now we can compare this to our purple, or our grape jelly purple that's down here, and I can tell you that it's much more reddish than that is. So sometimes it doesn't show up on the projection screen like you think it would. Okay, I'm going to take that reddish brown, that mahogany or cranberry or mulberry color, depending on what you want to call it. Maroon is what some people call it. I'm going to place it in the extreme lower right hand corner. And we are making really good progress on the painting project here. And that's a good thing. Painting is usually one of those projects that when it's at the end of the quarter, there's always some reason that they want to, have to take some time away from classes, and man, does that time really cut into our ability to get our projects done. So I'm really resistant to give up my class time. Alright, here we go. We're making good progress. Got to hold your breath sometimes when you're applying the paint very carefully. Have to have long attention span, sustained focus for, sometimes for hours at a time, but not always. This is middle school, but if you're making your own paintings, you would probably find that it takes hours and hours and hours. Okay, I'm getting kind of an eggplant color, if you know what that is, and that's a nice color. Eggplants look great. I don't like the way they taste, but they look fantastic. Cooked and when they're growing in the garden, when they're still raw. And, okay, now I'm going to have to pick up this little scrap of tape that's holding my board down, and when that little corner dries, I'm going to put that piece of tape back on because I don't want my board moving around. It kind of it messes up the focus of the camera when that is moving around too much. Alright, so you got to keep going back, and we want it to be opaque just like every other project that we do, and so we're just going to go back and touch it up a bit until it's opaque. Now in the physical classroom we will be using tempera paint, and tempera paint dries very quickly and it brightens up. So in the physical classroom, each grade level uses something slightly different. But tempera paint works really good, especially for this project. Alright, and this is appearing to brighten up as it dries as well. Okay, that looks fantastic, I do believe. Alright, so I'm going to rinse out my paintbrush, and I'm going to make sure it's clean before I move on to the next color, and I'm going to dry it out. So you always have to constantly be cleaning and drying the brush in order to get good effects. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to do blue-violet. And blue-violet in this case, we don't have to mix up a whole new puddle. All we got to do is put more blue into our red-violet so that it overpowers it and makes it a very, very dark kind of a navy blue color. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. So we're going to overcorrect it. Overcorrecting it is like when you're riding your bicycle down the street and you almost hit a car on one side of the street, and you steer so hard the other direction that you end up hitting a mailbox on the other side of the road. So we're going to go from one side of the violet color family to the other side of the violet color family. So this is the reddish side. We're going to make blue-violet by overcorrecting that red-violet. So it's going to take probably 2 very large scoops. If we end up with grape jelly purple, then we've got to add more blue. Alright, now just like we were doing before, we want to not smear this all over the card. We want to get all of these various little strands mixed together in here, so that we come out with something that is very, very dark blue. Indigo is the actual color we're looking for, like a brand new pair of blue jeans. And mine's starting to get smeared around. I'm trying to keep it into the middle of the puddle here. I may have to go and get some more blue here from this, so that means I'm going to have to kind of rinse out my brush. It's getting a little soggy, and then dry it, constantly drying the brush, and then pick up another scoop of blue, and that ought to do it. So now this should get very, very bluish colored, very almost navy blue, when all of that blue is worked into this violet. And it's getting very good right now. So sometimes you may not be able to see these things directly on the camera, but I think it's showing up pretty good right now. So on the camera. So this, we've gone all the way past grape jelly purple, which would be just regular violet over here, and now we've got this very, very deep blue purple color. Okay, so I'm going to take that color and I'm going to first of all rinse out my brush and dry it again so that I get good control here. And then I'm going to place it directly in this kind of curvy crescent shape that's just above it. Alright, and it looks fantastic. So you got to mix up enough paint so that you can do the painting. So one person's scoop is another person's dip, is another person's dot. But you have to use enough paint so that when you are putting it onto the surface, that it will fill up that entire surface on your painting. So it's very difficult to go back and remix the same type of paint exactly. So if you had to mix up more paint, it would be difficult to match that color. Okay, so I'm doing pretty good here. I'm going to go back to my paint and some more. Here we go. Boy, that's a lot of paint, but I think I can handle it. So just got to put it on very carefully. Hold your breath when you must in order to get good smooth marks and accuracy where the shapes come together at. There we go. Alright, now you've got to be careful, because if your existing paint is still wet, it's going to be tough to tuck those up right next to each other like you see me doing. Alright, so that came in pretty good. Let's continue to just touch it up a bit so we can get our good control. And paint dries pretty quickly. And we're trying to get one nice, uniform, even color, carefully controlled and opaque. Alright, so these colors are a little more complex to mix up, and generally what happens is it takes us a while to do the tertiary colors. Now, but once you understand that it's not one particular color, a tertiary color like red, violet, is simply violet that's got more red in it than blue. That's all it means. Okay, now that looks really good. Huh. Okay, very deep blue. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and rinse out my paintbrush again, and we're going to change colors at this time. And we're going to mix up some different colors. Now I'm going to kind of move some of my materials around here, so I'm going to turn this around like this so I can use my colors and mix them here. Now, so I think what we'll do next is we'll go to our oranges, because the oranges are generally pretty easy to mix up, but so are the green. It's my opinion that they're all pretty easy to mix up, but it does take experience to make these things work out. And so, thinking that, let's go with the oranges next. So I think what we're going to try to do first is make yellow-orange, and because yesterday, if you do recall, it requires that we use more yellow in most of our painting because it doesn't have as much power as some of the other ones do. So let's take 4 scoops of yellow. Okay, 4 scoops, right from the edge of it if you can make that happen. Try to get all of it off your brush. Now you really need to keep your brush clean. The next class, if you are in a 6th grade class, of course, will be using your paint, and it's really important that you preserve it for them so it's not all gross. Now, so we've got 4 scoops of yellow. We're going to take just a small dip of red, and we're going to put those two together. And what we should get is a very, very pale orange color, tending totally more towards yellow than towards the red side. Okay, very good. Okay, got to get all of those strands mixed in there in order for it all to be the same one uniform color. Now, as much as I hate to say it, I think I need to put some more yellow in this. So I got to rinse out my brush, dry it out, and pick up probably one more good scoop of yellow there. So it's constantly being adjusted. You've got to just kind of get over that. It's very difficult to get it right on the very first attempt. And that's why I guess people buy orange paint instead of making their own. But see, we're purists in this class. That's pretty nice. That's looking real good. Get all that yellow off the paintbrush and into the little puddle and scrape it into a tight little pile, just like if it was a pile of sand and your paintbrush was a little broom. Okay, so that looks pretty good right there. Now my brush has got a lot of stuff on it, so I'm going to rinse it off. And then I'm going to dry. And I'm going to take my yellow-orange and I'm going to place it in, let's say, this area just above those violets we were just making a moment ago. Now you can see that this is different than the orange that we made in secondary orange. So it's going to go right in here. And what would be shape number 9 on my painting, but you shouldn't have any numbers on it. So for my demonstration piece here, you can kind of see some of the numbers showing through the lighter colors of paint. If I were making an actual painting, not a demonstration or an instructional piece, then I would have erased those out very carefully. But I think it helps when we are painting it in. Sometimes I can reference that number and people can find that and more easily in their own painting. Even though I don't want you to have those numbers in your painting, you should have erased those already. Alright, this is looking pretty good. So this will likely dry. It's lighter color than it goes on. Okay, I gotta very carefully work. Right, there we go. Okay, right into that little corner right there. Very good. Okay, gotta hold your breath sometimes, especially when you're making fine marks. Yeah, I need a little bit more. Just gotta keep addressing the opacity, keep the paint moving around. And that's how you get one kind of uniform color to appear. Okay, so see, we're making really, and these colors are a little more complicated than some of the other colors are. And so we're making pretty good progress on them because we're already on our 3rd one of the session. And that's fantastic work, in my opinion. And in the physical classroom, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. I'll be answering questions, checking the people's work as I move around the classroom. But in this particular type of lesson, you can pretty much work at if you can keep up, you can work at a pretty rapid pace along with me, if you can keep up. And if you can't, that's okay too. Simply take some time to slow down the video perhaps, and you know, just do good work rather than fast work. Okay. Very nice. So this is the solution to all of your tertiary colors, or intermediate colors as some people call them, is simply to remember that it just has to have more of the primary color in it than the secondary color. So if this were, since it's yellow-orange, it just has to have a lot more yellow in it. That's kind of the rule of how to make your tertiary colors. If we're making yellow-green, then the same thing. It would be more yellow. See that very touchy area right there. I'm trying not to lay my arm in paint. So there we go. Smooth line. Let's see if I can duplicate that yet again. There we go. Very nice. Okay, so we just got to go back and address opacity. You know, make sure it's got a nice smooth finish, or it's starting to want to dry. All right. Okay, that's looking fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. So, once I get this touched up in that area right there, and down in that corner, there we go. Then we can move on to the next thing, which would be, so if we went with red, violet first, and then we went with blue, violet after that, so we went with yellow, orange first, and so that means that now we're going to have to go with red-orange in the next step. So once again, we're going to overcorrect it. This time we're going to try to dodge the mailbox, but we might hit the car on the other side of the road if we're not careful. So we're going to overcorrect it. And so red-orange is simply orange that has more red in it than yellow. And so it's going to be, we're going to take, let's just take 2 generous scoops of the red and place it right in the orange that we just made, or the yellow orange, excuse me. 2 generous scoops. And you should take it from the edge of the puddle if you can, so you can preserve the paint for the next class that has to use it. Okay, now we're going to stir it all together again. Tight little pile, just like it was sweeping up a tiny little pile of sand with a teeny broom. And some people mistake this color for straight up red. However, when you check them against each other, you will notice that this is not red. It's, you know, a type of orange. But if you weren't comparing them to each other, it substitutes nicely for a red. Now, there are different types of red too, like, you know, scarlet and vermilion and crimson, and there's many different colors of red. Okay, so see how this is a very deep colored red, and this is quite significantly lighter. So this is red-orange. We're going to take our red-orange and we're going to paint it in to the diamond shape. So as you're noticing, really, this painting can come together rather quickly if we are all staying on task, of course. But in a typical physical classroom, I do have to answer questions and that kind of thing. You know, that's just how a class works. And so, you know, the pace of a typical class is a little bit slower than in the physical classroom than what we're doing right now. So when we're doing grouped lessons together in the physical classroom, you know, we have to go at a pace that everybody can keep up. If we start leaving people behind, then we really have issues. Then we get having to answer the exact same question numerous times. So I'm thinking that, the beauty of this kind of approach here with the videos is that if you don't have a good answer or you didn't get a good result, you can go back and replay the video and kind of figure out where you may have gone wrong. And that will be very helpful if you are going to have to make up perhaps a project that you had missed out on, or some days out of school that you were trying to catch up on all of your schoolwork that you had missed. Then I believe that this would be a really good way to do that. So I could simply just direct you to go and watch the video. Alright, so progress is being made in the red-orange. Painting with the back of the brush a little bit. So it's also important to watch yourself paint and just, observe yourself doing these things. And you'll notice that you have certain habits and tendencies. And certain habits you really do want to develop. And some of those would be like, rolling the paintbrush around in your hands, just like I have explained with a pencil. And what that does is it keeps all the bristles kind of tightened together at the end of the paintbrush, see? And it keeps it, if it's a round brush, it keeps it a little bit pointier that way. It also uses some gravity to help pull the paint towards the surface of the painting. So each time you roll the paintbrush around, its gravity is pulling that paint more towards the end of the brush. And it also just helps to be able to get a nice smooth finish, so you don't have your brush is all clogged up on one side and then all it doesn't have anything on the other side of it. Alright, so that's pretty good on the oranges there. So let's rinse out our paintbrushes, and we're going to move on now to the greens. And we're going to make we will probably start with the yellow-green first, because it's very important to know how the yellow works when we are attempting to make these particular colors. Yellow is a very weak pigment. That's the colored portion of the paint, and as a result we usually have to use more of it when we want to make any tertiary color that we're going to call yellow this or yellow that, yellow orange or yellow green. Alright then, so if we're going to do that, let's go ahead and make some yellow green first. And we're going to, just like we did with the yellow orange a moment ago, we're going to take 4 large scoops of the yellow. Now we use up so much yellow in the physical classroom, I usually have to walk around and carry a bottle around with me, so we can always get people more yellow. Okay, so that's 4 of those. And in this case, we got to rinse out our brush because we don't want to pollute the paint, especially for our next classmates that may be in the next class using that paint. Okay, now we're going to just take just a little bit of blue, just a bit of blue, and we're going to just a bit of blue, not even a whole scoop. We'll put it in there, and we're going to scrape all of that yellow and that little bit of blue together into a very, very tight little, very pale green, kind of chartreuse green or Shrek green, baby snot green. That's kind of what it looks like too. You've ever seen that? That's disgusting. Or smashed bug green, I think sometimes that's also a good color that I've heard people call it. Alright, that actually looks pretty good. Now when we compare it to the actual green over here, we can see that this green is darker than the green that we just made, and we also know that the green will brighten as we let it dry. So in this case now we're going to put in our, let's take the yellow green and we're going to, let's say we'll place it in this shape right here. Well, I guess we're going to now because I put a mark in it there. Now you may see my numbers show through here. You shouldn't be able to see your numbers. My numbers were simply for the instructions, and they're much easier to reference sometimes, but your particular painting should not have numbers on it. But when I think you're starting to figure out, when we use these lighter colors that tend toward yellow, they don't have as much concealing power as some of the other ones do. Alright. So yellow-green. It's almost yellow, but when you compare it to it, you can see that it's green. So we totally made this yellow. So it's a lot of yellow, just a little bit of the blue, right? Okay, so let's keep carefully. Alright, so we're painting up right next to the lines, and so you have to be very careful so you don't snag any of the previous color if it's still not dried out, because it will smear those colors together. Alright, so we're still making good progress here. I got a little bit over the line there. I'm going to have to chastise myself harshly for that. I was using the wrong side of the brush. Using the back of the brush, and I couldn't see what I was doing. So I practice what I preach. Alright, so this is coming along quite well. I like that little corner to be touched up right there, right over in here too. That corner messes with me if I don't do something. Okay, this is looking good. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just touch up the texture a bit here, so I get good opacity as much as can be achieved with yellow paint. Alright, very good. Okay, so that's the yellow green. Now I'm going to rinse out my brush, and we're going to overcorrect this one more time, and we're going to overcorrect it by making it a very, very dark green, much darker than even the secondary green down here in this corner. So we are going to require several large scoops of the blue to be mixed into our yellow green. And so let's make that happen. So why don't we take, let's start with two very large dips of the blue. And then again, another large dip of the blue. This should really do the job. We want this to be a very, very, very dark forest green, or a teal, or a maybe blue. We're trying to make blue green. So blue green can be lots of different types of various colors. But we are trying to get something that's teal, or kind of aqua, or deep, deep forest green. Kelly green is another very bright or very dark color of green. So this is looking pretty good. It certainly does not look like this green over here. So we have accomplished that particular mission. Okay, I need to get all of those strands mixed in there, and then I need to clean out my paintbrush because it is filthy. Okay, and I'm not banging it on the side of the rinse water so it splatters stuff everywhere. I'm trying to keep that from happening, in fact. So this blue-green, teal, aqua, blue-green, it's got to be different than this green down here, is going to go directly underneath our yellow green that we just made a moment ago. And as you can see, these three greens are really quite different from each other, even though the only thing that's changed is how much of one color or the other we mix together. And that's really all there is to know about your color theory, at least at this particular grade level. Okay. Alright, so to the Tinting Scale, which will be probably, we'll get that done easily, I think, in the next session. So we may be able to finish this project here in about 8 or 9. Probably, every time I say that, I'm wrong. So, but I'm going to give it 10 sessions. I'm still going to guess 10 sessions. But today we got through 6 colors. So if we get through 6 shapes each day, and there's 40 shapes, then it should take, we should finish it in about 7 days. 7 class sessions. That's a good thing. At least in the you know, the lesson like this, the video lesson. Alright. Oh, wow, that caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for that. So, well, I'll just finish up what I'm doing right here with this last little bit of blue-green there, and we will have to wrap this session up. So, if you're in the physical classroom, of course, I'd really be grateful if you would simply put all your trash in the trash, make sure that your rinse water is dumped out in the buckets up by the sink, under the counter up there, under the table. Put all your paper towels in the appropriate trash can closest to you, and then I would say that you should rack your painting, and we will be ready to move on to the next class. So as soon as I get this touched up, looks like that's going to be right now. Okay, I'm going to go back and do a little bit of work to make sure I've got a nice smooth surface. I'm going to paint around a little bit there so you get opacity and not a scratchy finish, but one that looks uniform. Because, you know, trying to learn to run the paintbrush is not so easy as it sounds sometimes. Okay, wow, that's very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's been a successful day of painting. So, thanks for your attention. Make sure you clean your stuff up, and I will see you in the next session. Have a nice day.